My word for it. It's time now for our Future Politics panel with Jonathan Gibson, who's a political commentator, and Reem Ibrahim, who also is a political commentator. A very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
It's about 3 weeks, hasn't it?
Has it? Yes. Well, of course, a lot happened in those 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Hell of a lot happened, David.
So obviously we now have a new monarch. We now have a new Prime Minister. Let me start, if I may, by well, obviously they got into power and they've been there for 4 days, and then on Friday we had this mini fiscal event, which was a major fiscal event.
Not very many.
Let's start with you, Reem, with the mini budget. What did you make of it?
So I was expecting it to be a little bit more radical on the tax cutting side when it comes to the basic rate. I mean, they're cutting the basic rate in 2023, so it's sort of a plan, probably looking ahead towards the next election, so it's probably quite a...
Which will be 24.
Move. Yeah, so it's probably a political move in that sense. I'm happy to see tax cutting. I think that I was feeling, cautiously optimistic about the Liz Truss administration. We need more of our own money in our own pockets, but this is a tax cut that really does focus on the wealthy. So
this is essentially a tax cut of 1% from 20% down to 19%. Now, the government estimates 31 million people will be getting £170 a year more. It's a bit of a blunt instrument, isn't it, Jonathan?
It is, and I think the stats do all show that it is rich people who are really being disproportionately helped by this new mini budget, as it was called, which actually is really, really huge in the amount it changes. It's radical, and it came as a bit of a shock in a sense to me how radical it came and how instantaneous it almost was. So I'm slightly worried, I'll be honest, about the mini budget and the impact it has and the way in which it does disproportionately help wealthy people at a time when borrowing and national debt is so high and rising.
Is it the right move? Is it the right message, though, to say we've got a new Prime Minister, we mean business? The one thing I would say about Liz Truss is she answers a question, and she said she's prepared to be unpopular, and she's going to implement tax cuts, and she's pretty much done it.
She has done what she said, but in my personal opinion, I don't necessarily support those tax cuts in the way that they're being carried out, in the way that they're focusing on saving money for those that are the wealthiest, and the way that it will affect and save money, like small amounts, for those who are on the poorest end. I mean, even the national insurance hike, which is probably the most progressive out of many of her policies, will save £94 for those on a 20,000 income compared to £1,094 for those on a 100,000 income, and that's nothing compared to the 45,000. I think it's something. I don't think it's enough to help those who are really struggling at the bottom. I mean, we haven't forgotten that people are going to be choosing this winter between heating homes and putting food on the table. It's really, really going to hit people hard, and I think this is a sign which is going to be unpopular, because it's a sign almost that it seems she doesn't really seem to care about those at the bottom who are really struggling.
OK, that might be a little disingenuous. Reem, where do you stand on national insurance?
National insurance, I think that it's a reversal of the existing increase, right? I don't think it goes far enough, in my view. But it is a step in the right direction. I think that Liz Truss has shown that she's a free marketeer. She, is a principled free market liberal, and actually she is taking the right steps in those right directions. I do think that it needs to be more radical, though. I think that we need to see a reduction in the national insurance hike. We need to see a reduction in corporation tax, not just the reversal
But that
again.
was quite a big change, wasn't it? Down from, what, 24% down to 19%, or at least the plan to go up to 24%.
Exactly,
That's significant.
But we don't know how long that's going to take. It's sort of a long-term plan. I think, again, I'm feeling optimistic about it, but I want to see the change, and I won't be supportive of it until I actually see the change in front of me.
And what about for you, Jonathan, as a young person? Stamp duty?
The stamp duty I don't think necessarily will particularly help, because whilst in theory it might help because obviously prices, you'd think it would be cheaper, it could actually benefit those that own homes already the most, because they could increase prices because now young people are not paying stamp duty, and also people that own second homes.
So you think they'll use it?
Yeah, they could well do. They could just simply say, right, you're not paying stamp duty, now we could increase prices, and because there's such a demand for housing, because of the really stringent housing regulation there is and the lack of supply of housing, I'm not necessarily convinced that it will help young people. And there's also struggles for young people, because this is obviously going to contribute to the mounting national debt. It's not the same situation as in the 70s, as property prices increasing and real incomes are decreasing. And for example, when money was borrowed during the Brown years, it was used to fund investment in the longer term, which you could say was slightly more safe. This is a gamble in a way. This is quite risky at a time when we are in quite a precarious situation economically.
So tax cuts being paid for by borrowing, that's not very conservative.
No, it isn't. And this is the sort of, we're the young politics panel. well, this borrowing is, we're going to be paying for it in the future. I think that what Jonathan said about housing is a really important point. Liz Truss promised deregulation with housing. She also promised that she'd build 1 million homes on the green belt. I want to see that happen. I want to see an increase in the supply of housing so that we can actually decrease overall prices. As young people, that's what we want. We want to be able to own our own homes. We won't be able to until we're in our 30s, maybe even 40s.
But look at this, £26 billion of tax cuts, 18 billion of tax rises cancelled. That adds up to 45 billion. That is a huge gamble. It's the biggest tax-cutting event since 1972. It is really a bonfire of taxes. It's called the growth plan. But going back to your point, Jonathan, is it a growth plan or is it a spin of the roulette wheel?
Well, what worries me slightly is that immediately after the budget was released, there was a 3% decrease against the dollar in the strength of the currency, 1% decrease against the euro, and of course across two different share trackers, the FTSE 100 decreased.
But does that mean anything?
I think it shows that there's a lack of confidence in the markets, and I think that investors will hate this because they don't like radical changes, they don't like uncertainty.
But does it mean it's wrong?
I think yes, because I think it shows it is a gamble. I don't think we can clearly say that this is for sure going to lead to massive economic growth, and I really hope it does. I mean, I really, really hope it does, because it's a significant amount of money being paid, but I don't think it's a certainty in the slightest.
I think that radicalism in the face of freedom is no vice. I think that actually, if we've got to be radical in order for us to get where we need to be, and actually Thatcher was radical and it worked for her favour. If Liz Truss is a genuine free market liberal and she shows that she's radical, I don't see that as a vice.
So you make a great point, which is actually the one thing we have seen is a complete change in tone. We've got a new Prime Minister who says what she thinks. She's prepared to be unliked, and I think people... I mean, it was interesting listening to TalkTV viewers. They were sort of saying they weren't so sure to begin with, and they've sort of come round to the idea that actually here is a government saying what it wants to do and doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. She's made all of these promises, and to be fair to her, when it comes to the corporation tax reversal, and the national insurance reversal, she promised that she'd do it during the leadership election, and here, lo and behold, she's done it. She's actually promised something and followed through with it. I would personally like to see it go, more radically, but then again, within 4 days, if I had to promise those things and do it, I'm actually pretty happy about it.
Okay, so, yeah.
No, she certainly is tearing stuff up, but what is interesting is that it's almost a reversal of the previous Conservative government, and there hasn't been a general election since, so the whole levelling up scheme has sort of been crushed by her, which is quite interesting.
So therefore, do you think there should be a general election then?
I think yes, I think there should be. I don't think it will ever happen, and I don't think there's a mandate to do it. I think it raises questions about democracy in the way that there has been a radical change from the previous government, and there isn't the populace voting for them in that sort of sense.
So, I mean, the last time I saw you both, obviously we were in the middle of the Conservative leadership campaign. That went on forever and a day, for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, of course, they were on summer recess. Then we had that. Then, obviously, very sadly, the monarch died. And then, obviously, there wasn't any political business. Now, they're on conference recess.
Yes,
which goes on till the 11th... Goes on to the 11th
I'm excited because I'll be at Conservative Party conference statement, so I'm buzzing. But you are right.
I hope you've saved a lot of money.
It'll be very exciting. A lot of the drinks are actually free, David, because they're all...
I didn't mean that. I meant accommodation. But...
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we booked that weeks in advance, But actually, I think the conference is brilliant. And I know it's sort of the parliamentary recess issue. There was sort of umming and ahhing about whether or not conference would actually go ahead because of the energy package. They've managed to push it through Parliament in time. So actually, they're going ahead. I think it's a really great thing. It's a great time for us members to sort of go to these parties and really, explain why we love the party and actually advocate for what we want within the party.
So what do you think the mood will be amongst younger people, younger Conservative members?
Will absolutely love it, David, because look, as young people, me personally, I'm a libertarian. I wanted to see the free market Liz Truss, the free market maverick that I hoped that she was. I think that we'll be excited and we'll really see actually, we wanted Liz Truss to be this way. We wanted her to be the radical, brilliant force for change that I hope that she will be, and we're going to feel optimistic.
Well, at least I get the sense that you've got a new leader, you've got a new opportunity, and therefore anything is possible and I can get that. I can totally get that. In terms of you, Jonathan, have you any political allegiance now?
I don't have any. I'm not going to a party conference, unfortunately, right. But I think it will be interesting to hear what's going on at them.
So obviously Labour's starts today in Liverpool. Now, in terms of, I was just looking at the poll ratings, is Labour is, depends which ones you look at, but Labour is hovering around 40%, Conservative around 32%, which you would expect at this time in the electoral cycle, Lib Dem at 9%. How can Labour... I mean, I do wonder when I see that headline in The Observer this morning. This is Keir Starmer, obviously. This is his big moment, right? So we've had this fiscal event. This is his moment to seize the opportunity. And what does he do? He announces a green growth plan. Do you think that cuts the mustard?
I think what he really needs to be doing is focusing on party unity at the moment and maintaining a clear allegiance of support from people in his party. There still is infighting and still is anger over Corbyn's sort of in-out status where he's not allowed to be an MP, but he's allowed to remain a member of the party. And he needs to make sure that he's got cemented with him a good, solid group of people who are backing him and make sure he maintains popularity. In terms of what he's mentioned with the green energy, I'm not necessarily convinced that now is the time. I think we do need our own renewable sort of source of energy, and we need, as we've seen through the conflict and we've seen through nuclear power and the lack of investment into it and how that has affected our energy supply, we need some sort of method in terms of getting our own domestically produced energy. But I think now what people really want is they want some sort of method to help them get through this winter.
Yeah,
and they want
couldn't
sympathy.
agree more. I mean, in terms of what Labour is suggesting is they want energy efficiency to be brought into every house. They want onshore and offshore wind, which is all very admirable and credible, and also nuclear power. That is not going to do anything by this winter.
Those are long-term plans.
They are long-term plans.
I think, look, it's too little too late in my view. I think Keir Starmer has potentially the right idea. He's not marketing it very well by labelling it as green. Yes, it is green. Nuclear energy is green. It's clean, it's efficient, and it will increase the supply of energy, which will bring down prices. I'm completely against the energy price cap, by the way. I think that the this week when
capping it?
Yes, I am, because it affects...
You don't think the government should have acted?
No, absolutely
really?
not. I'll tell you exactly why, David. When you affect the price mechanism, you're affecting the way that people behave. I'll give you a good example on this one. David, what's your favourite drink?
Water.
Water, okay. So, say, for example, water costs...
That was a quick recovery.
It was good. Water costs you £5 when you go to the shops. And then there's a big water crisis. It now costs £10. So you've got to spend more money on your water. The government comes along and says, actually, we're going to cap it at £5. So for you, there's no price change. You go to the shops, you buy your 5 glasses of water a week, and it has absolutely no effect on you. Now, if the government was to then say, actually, I'm going to give you the money, I'm going to give you the extra £5, and you can decide what you do with it, you're probably going to buy less water. And this is the effect that it has on energy. If you cap the prices, people don't see a change in their energy bills, they see a really small change in the increase. Actually, what happens is they don't care about the amount of energy that they consume. They will continue to consume high amounts of energy.
I'm narrowing my eyes at you.
I'm telling you, David, we should not be affecting the price mechanism when you get into this.
Hang on a minute. You cannot have elderly people, pensioners, paying £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 a month. They will die from not having their heating on.
And that's why I say we should use existing infrastructure. We should use universal credit payments. We should use increased pensions, for example. Do it directly. Don't affect the price mechanism.
I see. So you would help, but you would help in a different way.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
But the tax cuts are not cutting the mustard in that analogy. Firstly, the point at which the cap is frozen, and we can carry on with your analogy, is nearer to £9 or £8 or something, not at the original price. They've already skyrocketed, and if people don't have enough water, people die. It's not a good thing. And the fact of the matter is, it's not like people are, for example, just simply wasting energy and people are not changing their behaviour patterns. People are already saving because people are already being so hit by the cost of living crisis. So I don't think it really is a fair analogy to frame it as that. And I think people do need support. I don't think the cuts, the £90 cuts, the £130 cuts, whatever it is, these are £1,000 changes. And with, for example, even the changes in the interest rates which are happening, which are huge, that can affect massively people with variable rate mortgages by thousands of pounds.
Absolutely. And of course, well, I was going to say the other thing is, of course, if you allow energy prices to go up, then you feed into inflation. We're seeing inflation at 9.9%. Inflation will go up even higher. I do wonder where the Bank of England has been, by the way, but that's a whole other ballgame.
Interest rates, where have they been?
Exactly. So, and as Jonathan says, then interest rates go up. So you're being hit by multiple things, aren't you? So you've got energy, you're trying to pay your mortgage, and then you go shopping, and if you've looked at the price of meat, for example, because of course all those prices are being passed on to the consumer, it means that people are really struggling. So you do need direct government intervention. You
need government intervention in a sense where we're giving direct cash payments to these people. The issue
Which
is
people though?
To the people that actually need it, David.
But I would argue, who actually needs it? There's your biggest argument. Because I would actually argue there are a lot of people who are squeezed in the middle.
Absolutely, and this is costing £60 billion, and it's going to be subsidising heated swimming pools, because the issue is the middle classes in this country are now going to be able to look at their high energy bills and actually say, if the government are going to be capping it, we have absolutely no issue with heating our lovely swimming pools or turning on the underfloor heating. No issue with it, David. As soon as we cap the prices, there's a socialist energy policy. We're doing it across the board. We're telling everybody.
So tell me, why has a Conservative Prime Minister adopted a socialist policy then?
You tell me, David. I'm not Liz Truss. I can't tell you. This is the one thing I think that the government
really
has got
surprised at you.
Why?
Because I think it is of paramount importance that we do actually offer help across the board to everyone. I don't think it's that straightforward. And there are people who live in houses they shouldn't be in because they're far too big, but it's too expensive to move. And they also need help. I keep hearing from elderly people who have turned off their heating, who do not have the lights on, who don't even turn a light bulb on because they're so worried.
I'm not talking about those people. This is a price cap that affects everyone. We're talking about big businesses that are now having their energy price cap.
But surely that is good too, because then it brings down the cost of the goods that they're creating, which therefore feeds back into the inflationary cycle.
But these larger businesses, these much wealthier households, they can afford it. Why are we as taxpayers subsidising?
Why has Reem suddenly become very lefty?
I don't think the majority of middle class households have swimming pools. I'll be honest. I think it's larger numbers of people possibly than you're making out that are struggling because of the energy prices. I don't think it's insignificant. A household on £30,000 income, which is the average income, is not having 3 heated swimming pools. Not all Rishi Sunak,
But Rishi Sunak will have his energy bills capped as well, right? And we're paying for it.
Okay.
As taxpayers, we're paying for it.
You make a good point. I could talk to you two all day. Thank you so much for coming in, Jonathan Gibson and Reem Ibrahim. Thank you very much indeed. After the break.